Okay, we're going to pass it off to our Vice President, Lori Jakes, to start the presentation.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon. My name is Lori Jakes, and I have the honor of serving as the Associate Vice President for Alumni Relations at Northeastern. On behalf of our program partners, the John D. O'Brien African American Institute and the Black Business Oriented Student Society at Northeastern, welcome to our program. I'm delighted to spend this hour with you and hear from a Northeastern alumnus and a double Husky, Gordon Thompson. Gordon is a 1980 graduate of the DeMoore McKim School of Business and also earned his MBA from Northeastern in 1984. He is the president and CEO of Westnet Inc, a distributor of medical and surgical supplies and equipment, life science products, and industrial paper. As you listen to this program, I think you'll agree that Gordon's passion for Northeastern is truly infectious, and we're so happy that he was able to join us today. But before we begin, I want to take a minute to go over a couple of logistical details. We are recording this event today, and we'll upload it to the Northeastern Alumni YouTube channel, as well as on the website for the Institute. Participation on this webinar means you consent to being recorded. You will notice the live transcript is activated. If you wish to turn it off, you can do so by clicking on the X at the bottom of your screen. The program will be a moderated discussion with time for a Q&A session. So as Matt mentioned earlier, we invite you to enter your questions in the Q&A chat throughout the conversation. We will do our best to answer as many as we can. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this afternoon, someone who probably needs no introduction, my colleague and friend, Dr. Richard O'Brien, the director of the John D. O'Brien African American Institute.
Thank you, Lori, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. As Lori said, I am the director of the John D. O'Brien African American Institute, and this is the second of several of these sessions that we are doing to highlight our alumni. And I have the distinct pleasure of getting a chance to have a conversation with our brother, Gordon Thompson. He's a wonderful brother, a wonderful friend, and a supporter of the Institute. But probably most importantly for all of us here today, he has a story to tell that he will make a connection to his experience at Northeastern and how that has helped build the foundation for his very distinguished career. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our brother, our friend, Brother Gordon Thompson. Hey, Gordon.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. It's truly an honor. The institution has made a significant impact in terms of my personal development, as well as professional development. So again, it's an honor to be here and be recognized.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Gordon. So let's first talk a little bit about the early days of your relationship with Northeastern. You know, when did your conversations with Northeastern start as an alum, and you know, how did that relationship begin? And what are the things, some of the things that have kept you involved with Northeastern over the years?
Well, let me just qualify. Before I became an alum, my experience at Northeastern was very impactful, and I'll give a shout out to you know, one of the components that you head up, the African American Institute. It was a strong vehicle, if you will, of identification, given the times, you know, and given my profile, you know, in terms of being north of the Mason-Dixon line. It was you know, it was very critical for us to have a component in probably the largest university in terms of student body in the Northeast. But in any respect, you know, once I graduated, I embarked on I became a husband. And soon after that, I became a father. So I didn't have the time management for any activity in terms of, or as an alumni. It really, the catalyst for that was when I started my business. And, you know, the co-op education program was something that had significant impact on me. And so I thought it would be very valuable it having an interrelationship in terms of being a resource to my business.
Now, as you started on this journey, I know your time here, you've made a lot of connections, a lot of friends, and even some folks that have worked with you. Talk a little bit about those relationships and the importance of those when you started out.
Well, again, let me qualify. The co-op program kept me in touch with various components of the administration. Whether, you know, one of the strong contacts I had in vehicles for sourcing students was Associate Dean Richard Harris. And we were very successful in having talented students. They weren't necessarily through the College of Engineering, but the College of Engineering was one of the prime channels, if you will, for Westnet to, and to this very day, we still, you know, it's been 28 years. So we've been practicing the co-op education, internship, relationship, you know, and I think that had an interrelationship to my involvement on the corporate board. You know, today I'm an emeritus due to the reorganization, but one of the things, win, lose, or draw, I have been not been able to do is ignore the impact that Northeastern has had on me. So it's been a two-way street, as I put it. We have a foundation at Northeastern in terms of for Boston Public School kids, in the name of my mother and mother-in-law, who were educators. And, you know, the network of Northeastern, you know, has greatly impacted not just my business, but me as a you know, as an individual.
Yeah. Now, you went through as an undergrad and also as a graduate to get your MBA. You want to say a little bit more about the Moore McKim School of Business and how the business school played a role for you?
Well, you know, the Northeastern had and has had to this very day talented, competent, creative alumni, but also the administration. You know, my professors, as they say, taught me a lot, if you will. And I also achieved a lot of parts of my value system, you know, from other administrators, such as deans, you know, Ellen Jackson was, to name one, Dr. Motley, to name another. I can't, I'm lost for the name. Roland, help me.
Roland Latham.
Roland Latham, thank you.
Yep.
And there were administrators at the Institute, you know.
Greg Ricks was one of them.
Greg was one of them, the librarian. I'm sorry, I'm lost.
Oh, Verdia
Brown, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mimi,
Yeah.
You know, there were so many, if you will, that, you know, have impacted me. I had one of my graduate school professors, about 10 years ago, I ran into him, and I was in graduate school, what, 30, almost 40 years ago. But in any respect, I ran into him and he asked me to speak to his class. He was still teaching at Northeastern when I was a student in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it was extremely rewarding. You know, I had to adjust or adapt to technology. You know, I come from, I was raised where you look at people in their eye, you know, and I had to go through a little shock because everyone had a computer, everyone was taking notes, but the eye contact wasn't there, you know. And I asked the class to close their computers, you know, and let's have eye contact. And we had a great session. We really did.
Yeah.
But you know, and it's not that I'm not, you know, anti-technology. You know, I deal with the latest technology. But the human interaction, which I may talk about later, is you know, to this very day, is a key element in terms of, I believe, in terms of anyone's development and success.
Now, a lot of students come through and obviously do the co-op program and get opportunities. I know you have a special place in your heart to offer opportunities for students that come over from Northeastern. Talk a little bit about that and how, you know, you try to make sure that these folks that come to work for you, you know, what kind of experience they have, what kind of knowledge you pass along, all those good things. Because the students that I talked to that have worked with you and for you said they had a great experience.
Well, the concept that Northeastern has and the platform, you know, has such great value. You know, being a product of it, back in 1977, after finishing my freshman year, the economy was struggling. So one of the things that was like getting punched in the stomach, the co-op program said, you know, they said to me, we really got to give priority to our upperclassmen because, you know, supply and demand, the jobs just aren't out there. And quite frankly, I was crushed. But, you know, I was fortunate enough. I came from an area that was very robust in terms of corporate operation, Westchester County, New York. And you had IBM, you had Hitachi there, you had General Foods. So, you know, you just had PepsiCo. You had a host of a fertile environment, if you will, of corporations. And I was fortunate enough to, how can I put it? I was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to propose, you know, a co-op job at IBM. So I was, to my knowledge, I was the first IBM co-op, at least in Westchester County, you know, which was headquarters. And that opportunity and the program, you know, obviously, you know, Northeastern's resources and support in terms of driving that program really helped me, you know, develop a skill set and be exposed to that environment. And, you know, back then I was so confident I wanted to be an accountant, you know, and work for IBM, which was probably the number one entity, if you will, not just in the United States, but globally back then. And, you know, that networking, you know, also kind of encouraged me to finish co-op in school in 4 years, because now I knew what I wanted to be, you know, and lo and behold, I went to work for IBM full time. and figured out, I don't want to do this. And again, the network, if you will, of Northeastern facilitated my graduate school. So it gave me a scholarship to come back to graduate school full time. I had been on a waiting list with another Ivy League school, which I won't name, but obviously I ended up at Northeastern. And, you know, again, the impact of now having an MBA and now, you know, developing and applying your worth, if you will, you know, was very impactful.
Yeah. Now, at what point did you get Westnet started?
Well, that was about 7 years after after I graduated. I went back to corporate and then went to small business and worked for a local African-American business in the community. And I felt the clock was ticking in terms of any aspirations as an entrepreneur. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, in terms of embarking on a business is, as everyone knows, is your cost of entry into a marketplace. So my mother and father didn't pass down a business to me. I didn't have the means to buy an existing business. And again, Northeastern provided some information, and part of my network actually worked for the Commonwealth, a Northeastern alumni, if you will, worked for the Commonwealth of Mass in government. And anyone knows that, you know, in our government, no matter what level it's at, we have something called the Freedom of Information Act. What is problematic with that is the time management it takes to get information. It's not as readily available, but today, as technology improves, it is more readily available than it was 28 years ago, if you will. In any respect, our state government here back then assumed that if you bid on a good or service, you were competent to provide it. Well, I didn't know the first thing. I really didn't. What I did know and what I was confident in knowing is the fundamentals of business. So whether I was selling some high-end piece of technology or just a simple widget, there are certain fundamentals that you apply. And, you know, obviously those fundamentals I had learned, you know, at Northeastern, and coupled with, you know, the real world, you know, I felt very confident, you know, real world experience. So without getting too long-winded in the process, I bid on some products and was awarded the contract. So I generated revenue. Now I had to figure out how to support and perform, you know, but I had a contract. I had a commitment in revenue. And, you know, I went out and bought a truck, you know, rented some space, you know, and I started progressing down the learning curve as an entrepreneur. You know, but networking is really what has contributed to the going concern of my company. You know, technology has advanced significantly. When I started with a paperclip and rubber band, laptops and notebook computers were just coming out on 1.4 megabyte floppy disks, you know. So it was networking, if you will. It was human interaction, which provided the information and the intel, you know, to strategically take next steps.
Mm. Mm. So that's a wonderful segue into where we are now, right? And a lot of questions that we get from folks like yourself and others that have gone on to be successful. What do you think is important in this environment today for for our students and even young alumni, those who have recently graduated?
Well, I subscribe to a couple of things, and I cannot emphasize this enough. One is a very simple tagline is, you never know.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, you never know the impact that interaction you had with that individual,
Mm.
The value of that.
Mm.
Quick example, the first contract I had with Westnet, I was delivering to a loading dock.
Mm-hmm.
And if I stereotyped and prejudged the people on the loading dock,
Mm-hmm.
My assessment would have been, oh, these people don't have any, what's the word? Juice or discretion.
Mm.
And the reality is they were the most powerful people as it relates to my business.
Mm.
They were wearing Grateful Dead t-shirts, dungarees and sneakers, but they ran the loading dock and they submitted the purchase order for millions and millions of dollars.
Mm. Wow.
And so the cultivation of having relationships with those people propelled my business, as opposed to using a top-down approach, going up to try and find someone in the C-suite.
Mm.
So, again, you never know.
Yeah.
Is my point there.
Mm.
I also subscribe to, a mentality that, there's a quote by Thomas Edison. There's a way to do it better. Find it.
Mm.
So, and then one other, which is the most impactful, is Maya Angelou.
Mm.
And let me try and do this. I don't have it in front of me, but, people may forget what I say.
Yeah.
People may forget what I did, but people never forget how you made them feel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm.
So the way in terms of organizational behavior at Westnet and how we interact on both sides of the ledger, not just revenue sales, clients, but it's also the source, the cost of sales, the manufacturers. And you wrap your arms around them, you interact with them. You don't have a heightened dependency on, emails. And in other words, don't underestimate the impact of human behavior and interacting human to human. No matter how far we advance technologically, humans are still making decisions.
Yeah.
Okay. That impact, if we're in business, revenue, but that impact, even if it's, whether it's a nonprofit, and you want to be able to balance that, at the same time, you have to maintain cutting edge technology. Don't get me wrong. But if you get too complacent, and get too dependent and conditioned on technology, and compromise the energy and time management in human behavior and interaction with other humans, you may be at risk.
Yeah.
And that's my philosophy, so to speak. And that's my experience.
That's a great philosophy. My dad used to always say relationships are the important ingredient to sustain you. Let me shift a little bit before I jump into some of the questions that we've gotten from folks in the that are online. The pandemic, I had the pleasure / honor of being there at Whittier Street when you made the announcement about giving out masks to the community. But it's a two-tiered question. The first, how did the pandemic impact your company, which was clear, positively and negatively? But more broadly, how do you think that pandemic has affected, the industry as well as business models in general?
Well, I'll start with the pandemic was primarily the scariest moment in business for me because of the uncertainty. I mean, given the space we're in, I didn't equate it to opportunity. I really didn't. I equated it to, it threatening my business our business as a going concern, literally. So I spent probably the first 2 to 3 weeks just having weekly meetings with the entire company in terms of preparedness, because you were absorbing a lot of negativity, and negative energy in terms of, where are we going, as a society, as a business, as, you name it. And the reality is it created an enormity of opportunity for the company. It had its highest, it contributed the highest rate of growth, per annum for us. It exposed us to entities that we were not successful in the past, but it also gave us a clear sense of disparity in our society, in terms of information, in terms of access. And, we, as much as Westnet is a for-profit business and I'm a capitalist and yada, 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 it's very difficult for me to forget where you come from and the people you identify with. So, whether it's cooperative education, whether it's special needs, whether it's the disenfranchised, those are people that I can't ignore, which means my company won't ignore. And one of the things that we had a wealth of was disproportionate in terms of people not having access to. And an example of that were masks. But we have been practicing this from day one. I mean, we used to, back the first or second years in business, we were donating blankets to the homeless, at the shelter. So this was nothing new, but we had, my point in the beginning was we had to figure out first where we were going with this pandemic, and where was the optimum point of us having value in it, so to speak, as opposed to allowing pessimism, if you will, to drive it. We were fortunate enough to use those energies and apply it to positivity, if I'm making sense.
Yeah. Now, what did you see as the challenges at business in general? I mean, was the fear and anxiety a big thing that everybody was experiencing?
Well, that's always a challenge. you know, unfortunately, we live in a society that, in my opinion, promotes fear.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
or can be susceptible to exaggerating fear. Maybe I'll put it that way. It doesn't mean people shouldn't be cautious. You know, doesn't mean people shouldn't be due diligent in terms of qualifying things. But I think, you know, there's a market for fear. You know, I mean, that's that may be part of, you know, human behavior. But in any respect, I think standards are going to change. You know, not to the degree where we were at that pinnacle state. You know, where the metrics showed, you know, a lot of negativity, possibly a lot of failure or inability to find a solution. But, you know, those numbers have changed, obviously. I think what is going to be imputed now is a great deal of caution, you know, and a certain degree of conservatism in terms of having, you know, par levels of preparedness in terms of PPE, the standards of cleanliness and disinfectant may change. You know, again, not necessarily at the height it was maybe back last summer or last fall, so to speak. But I think as a standard, you know, we may see standards of a greater tolerance where people are working from home. I don't know. But there's definitely going to be a change, even if we have I believe, you know, just from a cautious standpoint. You know, and that's, you know, that's what I see. I also see society as having a dependency on research and development. I think, you know, research, you know, to very simplify it, I think research and development has gained a great deal of integrity and credibility in society, as opposed to, you know, I remember if you said research, development, science, it meant NASA going to the moon. You know, so as an alum, you could see our institution at Northeastern has made, I think, its greatest investment in that area.
That's right.
So I think from a standpoint of, I guess what I would call inelasticity, or strong, if I had a vision of sustainability and long-termness, I think, you know, research and science is gonna be in the front row, somewhere in that position, so to speak, in terms of we as a society depending on it.
Okay, let me, in the last 20 minutes or so, let me take some of the questions from folks who are here. But I want to circle back just before we finish, so you can share the future of Westnet and, you know, the fields that you play in, that you, as you said to me during our practice. First question, what are some tips you would give for outreach connecting with colleagues? What should be the approach when looking to be connected for a potential job opportunity? Inviting others for a cup of coffee or asking for a 20-minute call has not worked in their favor.
Well, again, I am a big advocate of human interaction. You know, picking up the phone and calling somebody, I mean, sure, I advocate that. You know, I advocate emails, but if I had to, you know, from an investment standpoint, I would invest my time management in terms of direct human interaction. And if you subscribe to, you know, the 6 degrees of separation, you will find connections if you apply yourself to that. You know, somebody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. I'm not, and never was, a a big advocate, or I was never a participant in, the social medias, but one that I do participate in because it's more constructive in terms of its approach, and I believe its objective is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
As opposed as the others are more of exposure of your personal,
Right.
So, I believe, and LinkedIn is, the, what do you call that? It's an IT term, but the, how it works, is really 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It finds that common denominator, where there may be a probability of a connection, but to answer that question, I don't know whether you want to call it old school or what. Human interaction is what I suggest, and that's something that I would be more than happy to mentor. How do I reach that right individual that is going to increase my probability of success or where I'm trying to get to.
And you mentioned the key word, mentor. So next question is, as someone who has been a mentor for many years to so many people, what do you see as the most valuable takeaway as being the mentor?
Well, you get to see the impact that, your energy and your input has. And it's not just seeing it, it's the response you get from those that you mentor, if you will. That's the most rewarding part of it. When someone can communicate to you the impact that you have on or have had on them, and in many respects, some of them you will always have on them. It's kind of like, a legacy of a value system, so to speak, or a portion of their value system, I don't want to say. And that's because that's what I'm a product of. I've been fortunate and blessed of being, a product of those that took the time and energy to mentor me.
So an additional question that could be a follow-up to that is, when it comes to finding a mentor or finding mentorship within an industry that someone is trying to get into, it can be challenging to find someone. What would you suggest, or what would you say are some of the best practices or tips in finding a mentor?
Dr. O'Brien, I don't want to sound so redundant, you have to invest the time management in human interaction. Really.
Yeah.
It's the probability of success is very heightened if you do that. I mean, within a relevant range of what your skill set is or what your objective is, whether it's a certain profession, whether it's a certain industry, there are an enormity of resources out there if you apply and invest in the time management to do so. I mean, there's a lot of technology at our feet that can tell you what's going on where, when, and how it relates to my discipline, an industry, I mean, even a social event, a service. But you got to, and again, I would welcome giving direction in that area, because it's something I've been practicing as an entrepreneur for years.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I build strategy
Yeah.
from information. And, you know, information isn't necessarily at my fingertips. I got to get out there and go get it. And a lot of that information comes from humans.
Yeah.
You know, not necessarily Google. Humans,
Right. Right.
you know.
Right. No, that's an excellent point. And another question that's sort of along these lines, but a little bit different. Being an entrepreneur, what advice would you give to somebody with regards to time, things like time management? For example, some suggestions and ways to maximize time in a busy environment, or if you're a busy individual trying to wear many hats and pull them many different directions, what are some meaningful ways that you can think of for folks to manage all of that?
Well, I've had to learn, and I'm still learning. You know, I was, let's just say many years ago, I failed. I was a failure at listening. Okay. So listening, as simple and as logical as that sounds, many of us don't do that, you know. And you know, in my case, I have to listen to the revenue, meaning the clients, the customers.
Yeah.
I have to listen to the cost side. And more importantly than both, I have to listen to the people I work with. Because if we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, running an organization, the behavior of an organization is just as important as anything else. And you know, the more cohesive your entity is, the more profitable you're going to be if you're in the right space. Because, you know, what is the efficiency of people you work with does nothing but contribute to your bottom line. You know.
Yeah.
One of the things I did, you know, I used to, you know, we still do this, but the employees I work with, the company buys lunch, you know, periodically. I mean, often.
Yeah.
And one can scratch their head, why would you spend money on buying it? Well, if an individual, you know, the average individual takes an hour for lunch. Well, the reality is they spend a half hour preparing for that hour. They spend a half hour, you know, exhaling from that hour, right? That individual may physically leave the facility.
Yeah.
So you buy lunch, and if you take what the cost of that individual is, times the number of hours, times 1 hour. Let's say you have 20 people, and so that's 20 hours gone if they go out to lunch, just to simplify it.
Wow.
You know, you take that times the rate you pay them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that comes out to a number.
Yeah.
Now compare that number to what it costs to buy them all lunch. It's a fraction of that, right?
Yeah.
But more importantly, they don't take an hour.
Yeah.
They eat their lunch at their desk, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And get right back to work. But the reality is they feel good about the organization recognizes, you know, and appreciates them. So it's all according to how you look at things.
Yeah.
You know? It really is. And these are things that I learned from my education at Northeastern. These are things that I learned, you know, from the real world in terms of my experiences, you know. And sometimes, you know, a lot of things you learn is what not to do by seeing mistakes. Yeah. You know, so that heightens the probability of whatever you do is the right thing.
Yeah.
You know? So
I'll stop buying lunch for my staff. Well, you know what? Bill Belichick also said the secret to winning, on the field is to win in the locker room, right? And what he was saying was basically you got to build a good chemistry among your people you work with in this case, in order to be successful as an organization, and so along those lines, I would ask the question, what are some of the qualities you look for in the people that you bring on to your team?
Well, it's drive. Now let me go back to let's go back to network.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, I believe in 6 degrees of separation.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 28 years, I've had very little dependency on going to a search firm. So I believe that somebody, an existing employee, or an existing associate in life knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that may fit the need that the company may have in an individual. The other thing is that individual has a sensibility because of that interrelationship in the network of what they're walking into.
Yeah.
In other words, they can get a sense, what's that leadership like? What's that, because, you have this interrelated 6 degrees of separation. So it works for both ends. But, what we look for is really potential. And, there are certain people, that, I subscribe to. Some people just haven't had opportunity.
Yeah.
They may not look the best on paper, but I've had people, all they needed was an opportunity. And they have shined like you would, in other words, they've put themselves in a position where the company needs them more than they need the company. And that's what that's what I look for. People that can gravitate to putting yourself in a position where the company needs you more than you need the company.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you got to take care of those people.
Yeah.
Because there's tangible value and intangible value, and you need to be in a position to recognize that. But there is no definitive standard for an individual. It's I look at many factors, but the main factor is their drive, and their need for an opportunity. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
But we've been very successful because one of the greatest values of our company you won't find on a balance sheet. It's the intangible value. It's the cohesiveness of the people that work there.
Wow. Well, as I commented before we came on air, you look good. You look like you're doing well. You take care of yourself. Somebody who's as busy as you are, what do you do to, keep the stress from getting too much, or the weight of what you carry being too much? What do you do?
Well, I do network socially. I fish. I'm a water person.
Yeah.
So I try and find many activities on the water. Recently, since COVID has subsided, I'm back to playing racquetball. So I'm working on getting back in my bikini. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but you got to have some goals. So yeah, I mean, life is I'm very happy with life. I've had my tragedies, but there have been a lot of success, and I've been very, very fortunate in many ways.
Mm,
you know. And I have a very good network of friends and family and people,
mm,
that I associate with,
mm.
and to be quite frank, this is healthy for me,
Oh,
you know,
mm,
this exercise.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the idea and the goal, as we talked about, is particularly for young professionals and even current college students, is to understand those intangibles that you talk about. You know, the information you shared has been incredibly rich, because I think sometimes people focus so much on the details of what they got to do, they don't think about the things in between. And what you shared was critical. Um, so with and one last question on that, and then we'll close out. The young folks who are trying to be entrepreneurs, obviously in the early stages of starting out, you're trying to keep so many pieces together, juggle so many balls in the air. How do you keep from giving up, or how do you keep from getting so frustrated that you let it go?
I cannot truly answer that. Everyone's DNA is different.
Mm,
What I can say is you have to be able to tolerate failure.
mm,
Okay. On the
mm,
flip side, you have to be willing to invest again in that time management
mm,
of developing and cultivating relationships.
mm,
You know, uh, there's, you have to condition yourself and develop a tempo
yeah.
of, you know, uh, putting in the time and the energy, no matter what you do in life. I mean, it's, what I want to make sure is clear
Mm,
is that, I have a commitment
mm,
to young people
mm,
who have that type of spirit
mm,
and are looking to embark on that. So what
mm,
does that mean? You need to take advantage of that,
mm.
young folk. If there's a person out there that is committed
Uh-huh.
to 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 providing you some direction, whether you take it or not, that's fine. But
Mm,
take advantage of, whether you accept it or not, I should say, is fine. But take advantage of those and there are people out here who welcome providing people direction who need it.
mm,
You know, do not drink any Kool-Aid that says everyone out here is negative, no one's willing to support or give
mm,
us advice or give us direction. That is not the case,
mm,
you know.
mm,
And that applies to many different disciplines.
mm,
If it's a discipline that I can't relate to,
mm,
I'll direct you or help direct you
mm,
to someone who can support you in that discipline that
mm,
I'm
mm.
unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
So, my encouragement is for those young people, or any people, to have that type of positivity.
Yeah. Mm, mm. All right. So last question, and I circle back to my question about the future. What does the future look like for Westnet? And additionally, thinking about the new employee, right? Now, you got folks who are coming off the pandemic after 2 or 3 years. Work environment looks different for them. How does the future look for Westnet in this new environment?
Well, I don't believe that much is going to change in terms of how we navigate, so to speak. Westnet, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
The end users, if you will, of our goods and services
Mm-hmm.
are still going to require responsiveness.
Mm.
I'm not saying that it's going to be at the level of face-to-face human interaction.
Mm.
I think there will be a greater tolerance for virtual interaction, but we are going to maintain our emphasis on, what our director of sales has always coined the term for all the years of the company, wrapping our arms, Michelle Clement, wrapping our arms around the customer. Okay. So we invest time management in that. So we don't see that changing much. We may expand ourselves geographically, growth within the United States in terms of having a footprint, a distribution footprint, a facility, and obviously employment, economic impact, based on our customer base today. And actually some of it evolved out of COVID. We're doing a lot of business in Northern California. So the Oakland area is something that we are looking at very, very carefully, so to speak. But we again, I go back to that term I used of inelasticity. I believe within a relevant range, as long as we stay within that relevant range and not to venture off trying to be something we're not, or start to tread on the law of diminishing return, so to speak. I think we're going to be fine, because our business is really not affected in any significance to inflation, recession, to any great degree. People are going to have to adhere to applying healthcare. People are going to, or our society is going to look for research for solutions. So, we have a focus. You may even want to call it a niche, so to speak. But sometimes if you start diversifying too much outside, your bullseye or your core, you can put your going concern at risk.
Well, and I know I said that was the last question, but when you mentioned Oakland, it sparked a question in me. So what do you see with regards to your relationship with Northeastern going forward, and the fact that Northeastern now is going to have a presence in Oakland through the merger with Mills College?
Well, that's first of all, that's news to me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But my relationship with Northeastern is, whether I want it to or not, is never going to end. I mean, the institution has had an impact on me. Okay. Of positivity. Okay. And as I mentioned during this session, I have relationships with people today. They're no longer at Northeastern, but they're still in my life. And Northeastern was the catalyst to that. I can just go on and on and on. So, it's a sense of reciprocation in terms of it being a two-way street. Whether I agree with, whether I love the politics or don't like the politics of Northeastern, at the end of the day, this institution has had a valuable impact, on my life and all the tentacles that go with it.
Wonderful answer. Well, thank you, Gordon. We have come to the end of our time, and I want to thank Gordon again. Thank you so much, my brother. That was a wonderful conversation. We really appreciate you taking all the time out of what I know you have an incredibly busy schedule. And I want to thank our audience for their presence and their participation and some really good questions. And thank you particularly to Alumni Relations for their collaboration and support on this wonderful discussion. The recording of this event will be available on the John D. O'Brien African American Institute website with a link available in our chat. And so I want to give Vice President Lori Jackson an opportunity to say a few closing words. Did you want to say something, Lori?
Sure. First, I think I'll start off by everyone is promoting me today to vice president. I'm not the vice president, but
Assistant Vice President.
I'll take that title. So thank you, Richard, and thank you, Gordon, for joining us here today. I mean, a lot of what you said resonated personally with me. To the audience who is on this call, I just want to, again, point out the power of the network, right? We have Gordon here, who is a great example of the possibilities that the network can offer through Northeastern with over 280,000 alumni all over the world. So feel free, use that network to your advantage. Reach out to the alumni office. I'll speak for the Institute. Reach out to the Institute if there's any way that we can help you with what you're doing. We're more than happy to be involved. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Richard. And we look forward to seeing you at our next program.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you, Gordon.
Well.
All right.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Okay.